Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from the bunker, and in this video I'm going to be tackling the question, do you need to be stupid to join a cult? Now the obvious answer to that question, or at least it's obvious to me, is no, you don't need to be stupid to join a cult. There are plenty of understandable reasons why someone might get roped in to a high control cult-like group. But nevertheless, it's useful to tackle this question because I'm mindful of the fact that there will be people visiting this channel who have never been in cults, and maybe they see some of the stuff that I comment on, including the JW Broadcasting episodes, and they just think, how is it not obvious to Jehovah's Witnesses that that they're being manipulated and coerced? Or it could be that you have been in a cult, maybe you've been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you find yourself spiraling into a degree of self-loathing because you're thinking, how could I have been stupid enough to fall for this? And you end up hating yourself, or you end up projecting this self-loathing onto people who are still in Jehovah's Witnesses, perhaps friends and family, and your frustration boils over. So even though the question may seem obvious, or the answer may seem obvious on the face of it, I frequently encounter evidence of people having a very dismissive, very patronizing attitude towards people in cults and fundamentalist groups. So I thought it would be useful to spend a few minutes going over why it's understandable that people could find their way into cults, and indeed why it can't necessarily be said that we're all impervious to it. That's the main takeaway, I hope, once this video has ended, that no one goes away thinking, oh, I'm completely bulletproof when it comes to the chances of joining a coercive group or a coercive scheme, even something like a pyramid scheme, for example, where people are taken advantage of financially. It all has, in my view, the same underpinnings. We're dealing with scams where people have perfected the art of deception. And in the case of cults, when, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses call on you, they're not necessarily consciously trying to deceive you. They've got themselves wrapped up in a self-perpetuating ideology where it's possible to rise to the very top under the sincere belief that the teachings are true, that the religion really is God's one true religion, without it necessarily being obvious that the whole thing is man-made. That's how strong mind control is. So what are the ways that you could wind up in a cult? Well, there's probably two ways that I can think of. One is being born into it, which is what happened with me. And the second way is to be recruited into it as an adult, or perhaps some kind of mixture of the two. For example, maybe you're a teenager and your parents get involved in Jehovah's Witnesses and they in turn recruit you. But basically it's you're born into it or you're recruited as a thinking adult. Now, in my own case, I had no reason to doubt whether my parents were misleading me or not. It's in the interests of children, from a basic survival standpoint, to put implicit trust in what their parents are telling them. So if your parents tell you, don't go running towards the road without a grown-up, or if you're on your own and you go to the road, make sure you stop, look and listen before crossing the road. Those sorts of instructions carry the same validity in your mind as your parents saying the whole earth and everything around you was created by a God whose name is Jehovah, And the way we make this God happy is by doing X, Y, Z. When the stuff you're being told as a child has equal weight to everything else that you're being told, then of course you're going to swallow it. Of course you're going to become indoctrinated into the religion. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible that you'll ever wake up from the religion. Obviously, I woke up, and I'm very pleased to hear of reports of witnesses even waking up as teenagers to the fact that they're being lied to. But nevertheless, you can't question, or you can't call someone stupid if they wind up in one of these groups, because that's all they've ever known. That is literally their whole life, being told all the time by people they trust that this set of beliefs is true. Now, on the other hand, you have people who join as adults. And this is where some of you might be saying, well, okay, I'll accept, Lloyd. Child indoctrination is one thing, but surely you have to be stupid to join a cult as an adult. Well, again, no, I don't accept that it's as simple as that. It's possible that someone could just be extremely gullible and absolutely nothing is going wrong in their life. They don't have any kind of emotional vulnerability. They're just not very good at figuring out whether someone is trying to mislead them, whether deliberately or otherwise. But putting aside those who may be extremely gullible, what might be the reasons why a grown adult who hasn't been indoctrinated into a cult might nevertheless end up joining such a movement? Well, an obvious explanation could be emotional vulnerability. If something devastating has happened to you, perhaps you've lost your job and you feel as though your world is collapsing around you. How am I going to provide for myself? What are me and my family going to do? Things look so bleak on the world scene, and I don't see how things are ever going to get any better. Maybe someone close to you has died. Maybe you've lost a parent. Maybe you've lost a spouse. Maybe you're going through a divorce, and everything that in your life that you thought was a given, everything that you thought you could bank on, is suddenly being turned upside down. You feel totally helpless, totally isolated, and you just can't see a way out. And then all of a sudden, these people step into your life. Maybe they come to your door, or maybe someone at work taps you on the shoulder, and they seem to have it all figured out. They seem to be very calm. They seem to be very kind and well-rounded individuals. And with absolute certainty in their eyes, they tell you, I have the answer. I know where we can find answers to these issues. I know how this world is going to get sorted out. I know how we can get rid of all the injustice. We can get rid of all the suffering. I know how you can see your dead loved one again. And when you're in a very emotionally vulnerable, emotionally crippled state, suddenly those sorts of claims don't seem so outrageous, and you perhaps aren't as ready to subject them to the same critical thinking that you might subject them to if everything in your life was going smoothly. This is how groups like Jehovah's Witnesses recruit people time and time again. They know it works because they even instruct their members to capitalize on situations where someone's grieving. They have specific publications they will give to someone in that situation to sell the idea that if they join Jehovah's Witnesses, there's a chance they'll see their loved one again. So they're already set up to exploit these situations. You might have a friend who joined Jehovah's Witnesses and you're saying, well, they didn't have anything wrong in their lives. They hadn't lost anyone in death. You simply don't know what's going on in their heads. Nobody can really know what profound emotional issues any other person is dealing with. And there are any number of issues that an adult might grapple with that would render them susceptible to cultic influence. That's why cults are such a threat. That's how they're able to proliferate. Thankfully, with Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, it's getting harder and harder for them to recruit people as adults, because the internet is now completely loaded with information that entirely debunks Jehovah's Witness teachings. I always struggled as a witness with wondering, why am I not bringing anyone into this organization? I pioneered for 9 years. And when you pioneer, you commit to spending 70 hours per month in the preaching work. Now, granted, I didn't get my 70 hours in every month. There were many months when I didn't hit that number. But nevertheless, we're talking hundreds of hours every year spent trying to recruit people into my organization. And yet in 9 years of pioneering, I never brought a single person in. And I'm pretty sure now that I'm on the other side that I know what the reason is. It's because if I did speak to someone, and there were many situations where I would be speaking to someone and I would be thinking, they've got it. They're really interested. This person is going to become a regular call and possibly a Bible study. And then I'd call again the next time and there was zero interest. And of course, now I'm on the other side. I look back and think, well, it's because they used Google. But even so, even with Google, you just don't know what's going on in people's lives. And that's why I would never judge someone who gets roped into the Jehovah's Witness group or any high control group. And I certainly wouldn't judge anyone who has wound up in a group like Jehovah's Witnesses because they were born into it. Because how on earth were we supposed to know when we were children that our parents had been lied to themselves, in many cases by their own parents, and they were just perpetuating something, generation after generation perhaps, where it was purely a case of, I'm going to believe this because if it was good enough for my parents, it's good enough for me. And why would they lie to me? That's why organized religion, in my view, is so pernicious, because it relies on child indoctrination, on exploiting the innocence of children and the fact that they'll just believe what their parents tell them. I'd like to know how many people would be religious today if not for child indoctrination, because I consider it to be one of the main engines of religious belief. But before I deviate too much into atheism, those were just a few thoughts on why people join cults. And if you've been confused on this, or if you perhaps haven't considered some of the things that I've said, well, I hope that my thoughts have been helpful for you. But don't forget that to watch more videos of this kind, you can indeed subscribe to the John Cedars channel. I do hope you've enjoyed this particular episode. And as always, thank you so much for watching.